What's up, Pigs Nation? We got another great spring weekend, great weekend for fishing. So today's video, before we head out to the lake, we're gonna go over how to load out your kayak, how to set up a loadout plan, how to set up some things that might help you set up your own loadout plan, especially if you're like me and you do a lot of half-day trips, because it's a completely different feel than trying to do a whole day trip. So before we do, just want to go and let everybody know, rehash, we still haven't hit 100 subscribers. We'll give away one of these hats. We're at 97. 3 more people, and we're gonna give away a hat. So, what does that mean for you? It means if you haven't already done so, hit like, hit subscribe, and you might get a free hat out of it. So, without further ado, let's get higgy with it. Alright, Higgs Nation, let's get into it. So in this video, we're going to go over the 4 major categories that I use to create my loadout plan. And then we're also going to put this thing on the ground, and I'm going to actually do my loadout for this weekend and show you how the night before, 2 nights before, I do a loadout to go for a half-day trip the next day. But before we do that, let's get into the 4 major categories. So again, as an Army guy, I do a lot of loadouts. Loadouts are important. Loadouts are always important to help you remember the details. You're always going to remember those major end items. But a loadout is to help you and your team, in this instance, it's only you, remember the little details so you don't forget the little things. Now you can physically write this checklist down and you can keep it in your head. I keep mine in my head. So, 4 major categories, right? And this helps you formulate your checklist, but this isn't everything. First thing, fishing gear. When I say fishing gear, what do I mean? I mean, as a bass fisherman, my rods, and anything that I need fishing gear wise. So let's say I'm going bass fishing. It's going to be my rods. It's going to be my plain old box that's got all my hooks, all my leaders, all that stuff, all my crankbaits, all that stuff, all my soft plastics, all my top water lures or any kind of spinner baits that I need the next day. All that stuff rolls up into your fishing gear. So number 1, you're going fishing, don't forget your fishing gear. Number 2, kayak accessories. So as an Army guy, I'm going to mention that a lot because we're doing a loadout plan video and that's where I got a lot of this education from. I have already been forced to be uncomfortable in the field, and this is supposed to be enjoyable. I am not going to be uncomfortable voluntarily. So a lot of people ask, like, why do you have kayak gear as a separate category? Because that stuff is important to me, and nothing drives me more nuts than being on the water and not, for example, not remembering my radio. Sounds silly to you, but if you've ever been in a field at JRTC, I ain't forgetting my radio. So when I say kayak gear, what does that mean? Well, the radio is one that fits into it. Anything that fits in these tracks. So any major conveniences I put in that category of kayak gear. Your radio, any kind of Yak Attack rod holders that you're going to need for the next day. I've got an extra cup holder for the next day. I do a lot of filming for you guys. So both of my camera mounts, my Yak Attack boomstick, and I just bought the Panfish Portrait Pro. Anything I'm going to need depending on the filming. So all of that stuff, I even try to mount, and we'll show you in a minute, I'll even try to mount it. So, fishing gear, kayak accessories. When I say kayak accessories, I mean small conveniences. So if it's not necessarily a kayak accessory like my Bluetooth speaker, put that in that category. Small conveniences, kayak accessories. What's the third thing? Third thing is your cooler loadout. Any kind of pogey bait, any kind of food, any kind of snacks, as well as your water, your Gatorade, that sort of stuff. Even if you're talking about your 6-pack of beer that you want to take to the lake, drink responsibly, there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me, I am the last person that's going to tell you there's something wrong with it. You still need to have that as a separate category because you can't just go get a 6-pack of beer and get on the lake. You need to at least have water with it. You need to have snacks with it. If you're planning on being out there 4 hours and you need to prep for 6 in the event that something happens and you end up on an island somewhere in the lake, maybe you're using your motor. I've seen it all the time. Your battery dies. Now you got to paddle back. You were about to spend an extra 2 hours on the lake that you were not tracking. So, fishing gear, kayak accessories, and then the third one is your loadout plan for your cooler. I call it cooler loadout, but that includes snacks, accessories, snacks, things like that. Lastly, major end items. Number 4 is your major end items. When I say major end items, I'm talking about the stuff you're not going to forget about anyway. When you're creating a loadout plan or a checklist, always take those things that you're going to never forget and put them in a separate category so you can focus on the stuff you need to focus on. The first 3 categories are the most important, the ones you want to focus on. When I say major end items is the 4th category, I'm talking about the chair, I'm talking about the motor, I'm talking about all that stuff. So, to recap, 4 major categories: fishing gear, your kayak accessories, your cooler loadout, and your major end items, the stuff you're not going to forget anyway. My kayak is a major end item. I'm not going to forget that. I don't need to put that in the checklist. Now, some people, hey, you never know. If you've forgotten your kayak before, go ahead and put that on the checklist. But I'm not going to, so I don't need that. So, that being said, that is a good way to get your list started. Now, let's move forward and I'll show you how I do mine. Alright guys, phase 1, fishing gear. That's the first thing we're going to go over. So, how do I make this easier on myself? How do you make it easy for yourself? I'm not the type of person that wants to write my checklist down. Make sure you have a bag per major end item. That's why I put them in a major end item. So everybody's seen the Plano before, right? This Plano, that's it. I grab the Plano, I store the rods in the rod holders, boom. That's my fishing gear. If I'm going bass fishing, that's everything. Now, it could get a little weird if I need to use the yak gear if I'm going to do live bait. But if I'm doing live bait, I've already traveled to Savannah and I've already kind of had to think through that. That's a whole nother video. All right, so real quick, I've already done the loadout. Let's take a look at it. So, part of my loadout is how do you do this if you have a garage, right, and you need to secure your stuff. You have a garage where you normally have a car in here, and you've got your vehicle outside. How do I secure my stuff as much as possible so you're not going to get your full loadout done? What I do is I go ahead and set this thing in here and I zip tie it down because I can haul it now. It's zip tied, it's not going anywhere. Leave those in there. All my boxes are in here, but I leave them in here. If you notice, the Bixby battery's not in there like it usually is because I'm not going to haul the Bixby battery back there. I don't want to break it. I'll go through my soft plastics. Throw all my soft plastics in here. I didn't really get a chance today to go through the ones I'm going to use, so I threw them all in here. And usually about this time during my loadout, this is when I'll go through my game plan, what's going to work, what's not going to work, and then I get the rods out and set them right there until the next morning. And tomorrow morning, I will throw them in the Seaghost, and I will walk them down and put them in the truck. Boom, done. But for tonight, while I'm on this phase of my loadout plan, it also gives me a chance to re-rig. Take a minute, think about what I'm going to do tomorrow, and really get in my head about how I want to fish tomorrow. So, phase 1. Phase 1, that's how we do the fishing gear loadout. Now we're moving on to phase 2. Alright guys, phase 2. Any kind of nice to haves, any kind of kayak accessories, that kind of thing. So, again, how do I do it? You guys saw the Plano for the fishing gear. If you join Bass Pro Shops or Cabela's, because they're combined, you get a free bag. This is literally my free bag. It's nothing special, but I keep all of my Yak Attack gear in here. Not everything fits, I'll show you that in a minute. But it lets me know, okay, I'm grabbing this bag, and I'm going to slowly start pulling stuff out of it. Everything from Yak Attack gear to my Rogue, I've got 3 or 4 lanyards for different things. One for a cell phone, one for your catch tray. All that random gear goes in here so I can start formulating. All right, I've already figured out in my head how I'm going to fish. Next step is how do I want to fish conveniently in the kayak? What do I want to do? Do I want to put my phone in my phone holder, or do I want to put it in my leash and put it in the pocket of my PFG? Depends on the day, depends on what you're doing. So, real quick, here's how I loaded mine out. Now, this is the stage right here where you're not going to put everything on your kayak. Not everything's going to go, but here's how it goes. Here's what I got now for today. So, again, I'm going to go over things that don't necessarily fit right, so the catch tray goes along with it. So I went ahead and pulled out the lanyard, put it on the catch tray, and anything that doesn't fit on the boat, I can go ahead and grab, and I'm going to put it in the truck when we get done going over it. So I have finished that stage completely. It's locked. It's either in here locked up, ready to go, or it's in the truck locked up, ready to go. So I've got the bag here. I'm going to always take the bag, even if I didn't get everything off the bag, just in case I need something. So what I went ahead and did is I got the Yak Attack Panfish Portrait Pro. I went ahead and put the anchor there so it'll tow like that. So just left it open for the video. I went ahead and put the camera mount right here so it'll stow. So got the camera mount. I went ahead and anchored my one rod holder in the front because that's not going to go anywhere. I went ahead and anchored the paddle park. And I went ahead and anchored my phone holder because I'm not sure yet. That was actually a real life scenario. I'm not sure yet what I want to do. So I went ahead and put my phone here, my phone holder here, but I may change it and just use my lanyard and stick it in the pocket of my PFG. Now, you guys saw my fish finder, right? My fish finder's not on here because I do not want the Humminbird sitting back here where somebody can just unscrew it
and take it. That's why the Hummingbird's always in the bag, and that's why I always just take the bag, because there could be the Hummingbird or something like that you forget. There's also all this random miscellaneous stuff for the Bigsby. So if I don't take the bag, 9 times out of 10, this is the thing I forget. Right here is the remote to the motor or something silly. So I put everything on that I need, and all the rest of the electronics are in the bag. So again, that is going to be your phase 2 kayak conveniences and kayak accessories. Alright guys, phase 3, your cooler loadout and your food. So this one can get a little tricky, and I know I said at the beginning, and I've said before, you're not just going to go to the gas stations, but for a half-day trip you can. It's still worth taking a minute. The reason why this is in its own category is to take a minute and think through what your day's going to look like and what you're going to do. So for this loadout, what I usually do for a half-day trip, went ahead and loaded it on here, and it'll ride just like this. Here's your cooler, and went ahead and loaded 6 waters in here. And I like to have a beer. And since my doctor will now allow me to have a beer, what I would probably do is buy a 6-pack of beer and put a few beers in here. But by using this as a checklist, it also reminds me our fridge and freezer are just as small, because we're in a nice house, but this is Metro Atlanta. This thing is great with an igloo pack. I never use ice, like for this thing. Now, for the Yeti, that's a whole nother ball game. But by using this as a separate thing, it always reminds me to grab the ice pack, which is not in the freezer, and stick it in the freezer overnight to make sure it's cold so I can toss it in there. The other thing is pokey bait. I will probably go get some crackers or snacks if I end up going in the evening. If I go in the morning, I'll get breakfast. I usually get breakfast on the way there. Now, we'll take a tactical pause here because I've kind of breezed through this video pretty quick. And we'll say this: if you're doing a camp and paddle, you need to spend a lot more time on this piece than I am right now. If I'm doing a camp and paddle, I'm bringing this joker. I'm gonna somehow figure out how to use live bait or whittle that down, and this thing's going and loaded down in the back of this Seaghost. And it will fit, and you can haul this whole thing in the back of the Seaghost without it flipping open. So, again, real easy for me on this step, this time, but this is a separate step intentionally, and you really got to think through this one, especially if you're going to go on a camp and paddle or a full day trip. Either that or a full day trip. All right, so let's move on to step 4, miscellaneous end items, because these ain't little things either, and you need to make sure you have them. All right, guys, step 4, major end items. So I know I made it seem like it's not a whole lot, and a lot of times it's not. But major end items on a kayak can be a make or break, and they can actually be, typically they can be a little bit more than if you're boat fishing. Because if you're boat fishing, usually your major end items, like your motor, are attached. You hook up the boat to the truck, and you leave. You're not going to really forget most of them. But in a kayak, it can make a major difference. So what I do at this point, I've gone through the first 3 phases. I've got it loaded out the way I want it. And anything that's not loaded out that has to do with the first 3 phases is already in my truck, or it's the rod sitting right here. That's it. That's in my head. That's how I always have it set up. So what I do at this point is I go ahead and take an inventory of everything. I literally missed something. I just looked at it. Everything that I did not hit in those first 3. So we'll go over everything that I just inventoried, but I missed one. I missed one that I wouldn't have been able to leave without anyway, but I'm going to go ahead and show you my inventory, right? So here we go. Inventory. So here's everything that doesn't count in the category that I haven't already dealt with. I was already tracking those 2. I already mentioned those 2, and this is the point where I'll put those in the truck. I'll hide them under something or something like that. You don't want somebody to break into your truck in the middle of the night and find that joker. Sometimes I'll just leave it in the boat and wait until the morning and stick it in the truck. The other things, the assault paddle, which is not a make or break, neither is the net. As much as everybody says the net is, you can lip a bass. You don't necessarily need a net. Now in a kayak, you don't necessarily want to try to lip a toad, a huge one. Anyway, PFD, that's a big game changer, but I was already tracking that one. You see that if you haven't already noticed, I put the chair in the boat right out the gate so that I can load it down. So that one's already on there. And then the one I will tell you I forgot this time is the battery. So while we were on a break, I went ahead and put the battery in there and plugged it up and tested it. So what I will do with this guy here in a minute is I'm going to stick this joker in here and not plug it up. And then I'm going to close the hatch. The other thing I forgot to lay out, this is my dry bag, which I told you guys was going to have, which now has my wetsuit, my top and my bottoms in it, which also goes in my dry hatch, which I also forgot about. So those 2 things, without some sort of loadout plan, I would have walked off and forgot, and that would have sucked not having power if the camera went out. More importantly, not having a fish finder to at least tell me the depth of the water because I forgot that cheap old battery right there. So there's stage 4. We're going to go ahead and finish the loadout and close this thing out. Stage 4, guys. So I did forget. I forgot to go over it. I mentioned to you guys that I forgot something when I did my inventory, but I didn't go over it. Straps. That's why we do a loadout plan. That's why I said before, I'm going to get to the truck and I'm not going to forget it, because it don't matter if it's 4 a.m., you're not going to forget the straps. The other thing I forgot was my tunes, because I listened to it, ironically, while I'm doing my loadout. And again, I walked by it and I was thinking through everything to make sure I'd gotten everything. Do one last sweep. That's one thing that we didn't go over. Always do one last sweep. And this thing was sitting right here, still playing 90s grunge rock. And I was like, oh, the thing making noise. That needs to go with me, because that would be real inconvenient if I didn't have that when I'm on the water. So, that being said, I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope it helps. When you get home, if you're already at home, if nothing else, sit down and try to formulate a loadout plan for yourself. It's really important. It's something that I definitely got from the military and that I keep from the military. And even if I don't write it down, I still have it in my head. If nothing else, come up with some major categories. Think about the way you fish, how you like to do it, whether you're doing saltwater down there in Florida or in Texas or wherever, or you're doing freshwater like I am, or you're like me and you prefer the half-day trip, or you're going camping. You're just going to the lake, you're doing bass fishing all weekend and you're camping. Think about those things and kind of create your loadout plan. If nothing else, and you need help getting started, like I said, you can use my 4 major categories to help you get started. Use your fishing gear as one category, your nice-to-haves and your kayak accessories as your second category, your third category being your cooler loadout and your food, which obviously, you know, are we talking about a 6-pack of beer and some water, or are we talking about weekends worth of food? And then number 4, your major end items. So that being said, if you got something out of this, hit like, hit subscribe. And if you hit subscribe and you haven't already, we are 3 people away, like I said, from giving away one of these awesome hats. Hook not included, but you can get one of these awesome hats if you just hit subscribe. So go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe, and have a great week. Until next time, Higgs Nation, stay higgy with it.